Shalom, and welcome to Parsha themes on Parsha's Behaalosecha, and it's for the Refuah Shalema of Moshe, Shimon ben Leah, Esther, Chaya, Halevi. So the beginning of the Parsha talks about lighting of the Menorah. Va'amarta elav Behaalosecha es haneros, and say to him, meaning Aaron, when you light the lamps. The lighting was an expression of our thanks to God for illuminating the world with His Torah. Now, the symbolism of the Menorah. The word Torah comes from the root or, which means light. The flames from the outer branches would shine on the middle one, so that it was entirely illuminated, whereupon this center one, which represents the Torah, was ready to illuminate and enlighten the whole world. Another reason why the outer lamps were directed towards the inner was to indicate HaShem doesn't need the light, rather we do. Also, to indicate that those people on the right who symbolically engage in spiritual pursuits, as well as on the left who engage in worldly pursuits, should all direct their activities towards the service of God. Another lesson: if you want to light or inspire others, you have to be lit all the time yourself. In other words, to be constantly inspired. We need to be on fire in order to ignite the spark of spirituality in others. This mitzvah of lighting appeased Aaron. After his tribe of Levi had not been included in those offering korbanos for the inauguration of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, he wanted the opportunity himself to carry out mitzvahs. The menorah lighting was also an allusion to Chanukah in the Torah, again representing our thanks to HaShem, so it was a mitzvah with eternal relevance. But God could have told Aaron, you get what you get, be satisfied. Rather, we learn that kinas seifrim, which means competitiveness in spiritual matters, which Aaron here exhibited, can be healthy. The Gemara says in Baba Basra, kinas seifrim tarbe chochma, envy of Torah scholars increases wisdom. So envy can be a good thing, but if and when only it drives us to elevate ourselves spiritually. V'yas Cain Aaron, and Aaron did so as he was commanded. What is the big deal that Aaron did as he was commanded? Rashi on this verse interprets lo shina, Aaron did not deviate, meaning he was always tremendously thankful and eager for the opportunity of fulfilling this mitzvah. Rashi means that it never got old or stale or repetitive for him. Rather, it was always fresh for him, as if it was the first time. The message for us is, don't sleepwalk through life. We should always feel as if all the brachas, the blessings in our lives, are being given us again every single day. And that applies also to the mitzvahs, that we should consider them as if we are doing them all for the first time. Yashan, the Hebrew word for old, is comparable to yashen, to sleep. So, very fittingly, old implies we are sleepwalking through something because we have grown so accustomed to it that it no longer feels special. Other interpretations are that lo shina means Aaron himself didn't change. He stayed the same, down-to-earth, humble person, even though he had been given this very special task to perform continually. Now we talk about Pesach Sheni, which is the second Passover and second chances in general. It was the second year in the Midbar, the wilderness. Some of the people were unable to celebrate and bring the Korban Pesach, which is the Passover offering, because they were impure. Their claim was that while performance of a mitzvah should bring another mitzvah, as we are told in Ethics of the Fathers, their carrying out of the commandment of Meis Mitzvah, because they were impure due to carrying Yosef's bones, according to one opinion, led to the prevention of carrying out the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach. So this is the opposite of what normally happens. Those asking the question as to what they should do about the situation were themselves rewarded for their eagerness to perform the will of HaShem, such that the mitzvah of Pesach Sheni was given in the Torah in their names. Moshe said, "Stand by and I will hear what HaShem will command you." This demonstrates the amazing level of prophecy of Moshe, that he could have a spontaneous communication with God at any time. Yosef is the model for second chances because of the way he completely forgave his brothers for their ill treatment of him. Now we're talking about the question, Yisro leaves. Did he leave or didn't he leave the people at that point? So Vayomer Moshe leChovav, and Moshe said to Chovav. Why is this name of Chovav given rather than Yisro? So Yisro was given another name after he converted, as per the custom of converts to adopt a new name. Chovav is from Chiba, love, indicating his great love for the Torah. Moshe asks Yisro to stay with the nation. There is an argument between the sages as to whether he actually left or not, but most hold that regardless, his children did stay with the Jewish nation. Certainly his descendants settled in the land of Israel. You will be our eyes, says Moshe to Yisro. The regular Jews were Jews by birth, but Yisro was a Jew by choice. So you remind us how fortunate we are in having been chosen to receive the Torah. Converts can be inspirational. They are sometimes described as sapachas, a rash in the Gemara. However, this is because they are so inspired and dedicated compared to other Jews that they can annoy the rest of us sometimes. Or another interpretation, if he left, it would be a desecration of Hashem's name, because the Goyim, the Gentiles, would say this proves there is nothing godly about Israel. Theme 4. The camp travels. Alpi HaShem, according to the word of Hashem, they traveled. We were called to journey by the trumpets, but only after the cloud removed itself from the Mishkan, the tabernacle. This was the divine indication for the camp to start traveling. The haphazard periods of encampment show the people's loyalty. Sometimes they had to camp in hospitable place for a long time, whereas at other times they were tired after a difficult journey and needed a long rest, but were only allowed a short stay. But regardless, they never complained. Embrace your place. You are exactly where you are meant to be. This was their attitude. And for us also, wherever we find ourselves is where we are meant to be at that moment. Nothing in the world is haphazard, but is rather regulated by Hashem, such that in every place we are able to grow spiritually from the particular circumstances we find ourselves in. Therefore, if we happen to miss our flight or our day doesn't seem to go exactly as planned, there is a reason for it, and we can always take advantage of the opportunity which Hashem is presenting us in that moment. Now we talk about the shortest book of the Torah, just 2 verses from Vayehi ben Aaron and Shuva Hashem Rivavos Alfei Yisrael. Those are the two verses which represent the shortest book in the Torah. Rashi says or asks, why are these 2 verses sectioned off by 2 inverted letter nuns? One answer is because Hashem didn't want the text to record negative events consecutively, so this section interrupts them. What were the negative events? The first was V'yisa mehar Hashem derech shloshes yomim. They journeyed from the mountain of Hashem a 3-day distance. According to the Midrash, they literally ran away from Mount Sinai like a child running away from school, because they were worried God would give them more and more mitzvahs to follow. They could have left in a respectful way, but their attitude blemished the journey. It's true they couldn't have stayed at Sinai forever, and that of course was never the plan, but they needn't have been so eager to leave as if they were trying to run away from their responsibilities. The second negative event was that the people took to seeking complaints. This led in turn to the calamity of a plague. Vayehi ben Aaron, when the ark would journey, Moshe said, is the first of the verses. So the ark goes with us always and everywhere, so we can never avoid our responsibilities. This is the antidote for our negativity. We need to bring the Torah and its principles with us wherever we go. The Gemara in Shabbos says these two verses on their own are like a whole book, that all progress was identified with the Aron, the ark containing the tablets of the Ten Commandments, because the ultimate mission of the Jew is to bring the Torah and its teachings into every tiny detail of a person's life, both materialistic and spiritual. With this verse, Moshe began every journey with a plea that the nation should be protected against all those who oppose Hashem's servants, in other words Israel, from teaching and implementing his will. And when it rested, he would say, "Return Hashem," etc. That's the second of the verses. When encamping after a journey, Moshe would pray that the entire nation and its future descendants would feel the divine presence unopposed in their midst. Therefore, these two verses alone constitute a separate book which describes the striving for and final triumph of the divine ideal. Now, humility and Moshe's character. The pasuk, the verse says, "V'ha'ish Moshe onav ma'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama." And the man Moshe was the humblest man on the face of the earth. Hashem gave Moshe the ultimate compliment here. Not that he was a great thinker or groundbreaking philosopher, but that he had tremendous and unparalleled humility. His modus operandi was to take care of others' needs before thinking of himself. We could say he felt so much for others that he felt nothing for himself because he valued other people. This was in complete contrast to the values of the Goyim, the Gentiles. The leader should serve the people and Hashem, not himself. Now, more complaints. Those who complained, the verse states, they were worried about survival in the more remote parts of the wilderness, so they complained. Their mood was of rebellion and self-pity, and by their negative attitude they were purposely defying the will of Hashem. V'hasafsuf, the pasuk says, the rabble, the Erev Rav or mixed multitude amongst them cultivated a craving. This group of insincere Egyptian converts were continuously provoking the whole nation to rebel against God. They were also the ones who incited the people with the egel, the golden calf. V'yomru mi achilenu basar, and they said, who will feed us meat? But didn't they have large flocks of cattle and sheep which they could have used for meat? Thus their complaint was a pretext to moan about the manna, the miraculous spiritual food which they had denigrated. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt free of charge, and the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But the Egyptians wouldn't even give them straw to make bricks. So how is it that they were fed in Egypt with meat and all these other exotic foods free of charge? Rather, they were complaining that the food in Egypt came without any obligation, free of charge, in other words, to perform mitzvahs. The Torah describes the unique and miraculous qualities of the manna, which could be gathered without effort. It was like a rich dough with oil, but had the amazing quality that it would take on whatever taste the recipient desired. But still they were not happy with the manna. Vayishma Moshe es ha'am bochel mishpachosav, and Moshe heard the people crying in their family groups. Whole families gathered to vent their frustration outside their tents. But the sages learned that the reference to families implies the real reason behind their protests. They objected to the family laws taught at Sinai, which prohibited intimate, close family relationships. Although the ability to perform the mitzvahs was a great privilege, the people, as soon as they had left Sinai, looked upon them as unbearable burdens. By their urge to return to Egypt, the people demonstrated their desire to abandon the Torah and return to a state of debauchery. Now we talk about the creation of the Sanhedrin, the upper court. Lo uchal anochi levadi. Moshe said, I am not able to carry the weight of this people alone. Moshe was frustrated by the burden of leading the people on his own. Eshpa li, gather to me. God instructed him to choose 70 elders to replace those who died when Hashem struck them down because of their irreverent behavior when they ate and drank during Hashem's appearance to them at Sinai. These replacements now chosen were from the taskmasters in Egypt, who had sacrificed themselves selflessly rather than to allow their Jewish charges to be beaten. For this they were now rewarded. God punishes the people for demanding meat. So Moshe tells the people that HaShem told him they will eat meat. You will eat meat for a whole month. And the Pasuk states, "Hayikrecha," if it will happen. The miracle of the slav, the quails, which appeared to them to satisfy their craving for meat, appeared to be like a natural occurrence. Moshe knew HaShem could perform miracles at will, obviously, but he wondered how the meat could be provided in a form which represents the word hayikrecha, meaning carry, happenstance. In other words, without a miracle for the full month that God promised. HaShem demonstrated how indeed he could do so by using a wind to drive the quails into the camp. Now Miriam's punishment and the severity of the sin of lashon hara, evil speech. Miriam spoke against her brother Moshe, suggesting it was inappropriate for him to have separated from his wife Zippora, which he had done previously. She didn't realize this separation was required because Moshe had to be ritually pure at all times, since God could appear to him at any time of the day. Vayom Moshe pisoim. HaShem demonstrated this because he said suddenly to Moshe, Aaron and Miriam, "Go out to the tent of meeting." HaShem thus showed that he would appear spontaneously to Moshe at any time, who wouldn't be able to prepare himself in advance by using a mikveh, a ritual bath, to purify himself. Vayichar af HaShem, and HaShem's anger fled at Miriam. Even though she only spoke to her brother in private about Moshe, and that she also had good intentions, nevertheless, God punished Miriam with saras, with what we call leprosy. She was also banished from the camp for 7 days. This showed the people and also teaches us the severity of the sin of lashon hara, evil speech or slander. The people were happy to stay in camp for the 7-day duration in which Miriam was punished because of the righteousness of Miriam and the fact that the well sustained them which sustained them throughout their journeying was in her merit. Now Zippora and gematria in the Torah. The verse says, "Ha'isha hakushis asher lakach," the Cushite Ethiopian woman that Moshe had married. But she was from Midian, not Ethiopia. Rather, the word Cushite was a euphemistic reference to her beauty, not her place of origin. And to support this view, the gematria, the arithmetical value of Cushis, is the same as Yefas Mareh, meaning beautiful in appearance. Now, the uniqueness of Moshe's prophecy. Moshe was totally conscious while receiving his prophecies, unlike the other Nevi'im, the other prophets. And they were also not in the form of a vision or dream like other prophets. Also, the messages he received were clear and needed no interpretation. So therefore, Moshe was considered the greatest and is considered the greatest of the prophets ever to live and who will ever live in the future. Now finally, HaShem decrees, and we, his agents, fulfill that decree. A prime example by way of current events, Israel versus Iran, or Persia as it was called in biblical times. Israel is now in the ascendancy, Baruch HaShem, thank God, while our enemies are falling ever further into the abyss. The light is finally emerging from the darkness. Thank you for watching. Please tune in to our next shir next week, and may everyone have a wonderful week. Take care.